This whole idea of having a kind of method or a way or a kind of approach, a system that others copy is not a great thing. So going back to your question about minimalism, I wouldn't say I'm a minimalist, but I mean I'm a pluralist for sure. If you want an ism, draw things from lots of different places. But in a way, I don't. I mean, this again sounds like a horribly glib and slightly cliched, but I don't think of myself as an artist making great art. I see myself as a jobbing musician, just doing the next job. What do you want? You want this for this occasion? Great. Okay, have one of these. So the kind of craft element is very important to me. The craft, the pragmatism. Also, there's got to be a sort of spark of something that's kind of interesting and exciting, imaginative and creative. But it's the kind of Richard Rodney Bennett, who is another great hero of mine as a composer, someone who straddled many different styles as a composer, as a musician, great jazz pianist, wrote fantastic music for film, TV, concert music, 12-note music, opera, singular. But he said, if no one needs your music, why write it? And that really struck me. And I must say that I do not like the idea, really, personally, the idea of writing a great symphony that no one will play. For me, this is like, why would you do that? You could go out and have fun and drink beer and meet your friends. I mean, which is probably what I would do all the time, unless there was a deadline that if I didn't meet, I would be in serious trouble. I really do think that if I didn't have a deadline, I would do no composing. Simple as that. Well, since I've stopped playing concerts, I've done no practice. None at all.
I'm not sure you did any practice when we were doing
Yeah. Yeah, I walked into that one. Yeah, but that's an interesting question. Anything else that's kind of people are mulling over or want to ask at this point, as we seem to have a sort of couple of questions? Composing is such hard work. I mean, it's ridiculously hard work. It takes forever. And it really hurts. And it's great, and it's fun, it's fantastic, but that buzz and that fantasticness is actually the contact with other people. For me, composing is a social act. It's about collaboration with people. And in fact, in many ways, the more energetic and exciting that collaboration is, the more fun it becomes. And then, the end of the project is when you hear the piece in a concert or a recording or whatever. I mean, without that, it'd be like going to the gym and never playing football. I mean, it'd be very strange. But that's my personal view. I mean, of course, there are great masterpieces that were never performed in their lifetime, and then they got played later. But then, when I'm dead, I don't care. I'm not going to be here. It's purely sort of right. This is the next project. The deadline is very soon, and as soon as that project's done, there's another project and another deadline is very soon. That's kind of how it is for me. I mean, I have millions of ideas for pieces, millions and millions. Most of which will never get written. When a new commission comes up, I'm most excited if it's a new idea and it's an idea that I've got with the person who's commissioning the piece. They can get very excited about it. And often one of the most interesting parts of a piece is all the emailing or talking that goes on at the beginning about what are we going to do this piece about? What's it going to happen? I'm writing a piece at the moment for a guitarist called Zoran Dukic, who is a fantastic guitarist. It's a film commissioned by a Brazilian guitar organization called Guitar Co-op. And the guy who runs that, Marcelo Kayat, is obsessed with film, loves film. And he wanted to commission a piece from me about film. I love film too. Zoran's brother is a film director. So we've kind of got talking about film, about different directors and different films. And this kind of toing and froing of ideas, and the films he's suggesting that I watch, and the things I'm suggesting to him, that's where the real excitement is, in this kind of social interaction between the two of us. And we had this great idea. There's a brilliant Francois Truffaut film, Fahrenheit 451, based on the old Ray Bradbury novel, music by Bernard Herrmann. It's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant film. Julie Christie plays two parts, the wife and the kind of, not exactly mistress, in this guy's life. It's a great film, you have to see it, 1966. And of course, in the Ray Bradbury novel, if anyone knows it, it's a kind of set in a retro future. In fact, it was filmed at the Roehampton Estate, which is very close to here. Ooh, getting excited now. And in it, of course, reading is banned. So the society, it's a sort of dystopian sort of future society where reading is not allowed and books are burned and everything's fireproof, but the fire brigade still exists and they go around burning books. And so the idea in this society is there are no words anywhere. So we had this idea that the piece would just have the title 451 because you can have numbers, not words. But that there wouldn't be any printed music in the score. Because what happens in the book and in the film is that in order for books to carry on, people memorize them and then speak them to other people. What a cool idea. So Zoran had this crazy idea that would actually, we weren't going to put the music out of this piece, but you'd have to learn it from someone or from a video. Cool, huh? Maybe not. but it's these sorts of things that I find very exciting, that kind of social sort of connection. And one piece I wrote, which is a concerto for 5, which is a concerto for violin, cello, saxophone, piano, double bass, and orchestra. And it was really a kind of reworking of lots of other pieces, but nearly all the creative work was done by the pianist, Graham Caskey. He came up with all the best ideas, all the sort of stuff, and I basically just project managed it and put it together. He said he's not a composer, so he wasn't going to have his name on the score, so I get all the royalties. But he basically did all the work. I've worked with other people too, where there's been quite a lot of collaboration between us, and I find that incredibly exciting. And I don't see composing as something to do on one's own. And it's only exciting when you actually take it right to the end and you finish it properly. There's no good, okay, 2 things. First of all, perfection is a composer's worst enemy. If you're a perfectionist, you'll never finish anything and be always very dissatisfied. Excellence is a good thing, but perfection not. And the beauty of composition projects is you have a deadline. And if you haven't done it by the deadline, it's too late. It doesn't happen. Particularly if it's like an orchestra, where there's a hall booked, orchestra booked, stuff. If your piece isn't ready, it's not as if, we'll do it in 6 months or next year. It's never going to happen again. So you have to meet the deadline, or you don't write the piece. So it means, and of course, as usual, you do nearly all the work very, very close to the deadline. Something I identified with strongly with the composer John Adams when I saw him interviewed recently. And he described this process, and I thought, oh my God, that's exactly what I do. And then I mentioned it to every other composer, and they say, oh my God, that's what I do too. And essentially it's like this. What happens is you sit there and you procrastinate as long as possible because you're spending your whole life churning over ideas in your mind, churning them over, and getting really excited about the ideas. Then there comes a day on which, unless you start the piece, you will not finish it in time. And that is the day where you panic. And you suddenly put everything else aside and you sit down and you start writing. And you have an energy for a few days, which means, this is really great, this is really fantastic. And then that runs out. And you're kind of there, feeling like a limp, wrung out rag, thinking, have I done this before? This is really difficult. God, this is difficult. The deadline's really, really soon. This is going to be a terrible piece. People are going to find out that I've got no idea what I'm doing. This is nowhere near as good as my last piece or the piece before it. The piece after this one, however, will be amazing, but at the moment I'm here with this piece and it's really not good. And so then you start getting a bit sort of bad-tempered, and then you sort of think, okay, well, I really do have to do it. And it's that pressure of the deadline that suddenly puts you into a completely different place, and you just do it. Because if you don't, you're in the shit. You have a hall booked, lots of money. I've had to write program notes of pieces I haven't begun. There are, okay, coming up, this Calvino piece, I haven't written a note of it yet. Okay, first performance is in April in America with an orchestra. I've got a concerto for Moscow in March, not started, thought about it a lot. I've got a concerto for 4 guitars and orchestra for Germany in June, and a solo guitar piece in June at the same festival, the one about film. Then there's a concerto for guitar and wind in September. And they're all there, just sort of sitting there. And a lot of this stuff's been publicized, and it's been, that looks really interesting. And then you sort of Google and think, well, has anyone else thought of doing this as an idea? And think, look, there's a piece there, that's mine. Oh, right. And you know that you've got to basically do it, and you have no choice. Rather like playing a concert, unless you just pull out or something, I suppose. You've got to do it. And of course, you know that the piece will be ready because it has to be ready. If you had longer, you wouldn't finish it. You only finish it if there's a deadline. And in fact, you don't finish it. Again, it might be Stravinsky, it doesn't matter who it is, but it's a great quote. You never finish a piece, you just abandon it. And the exciting thing in many ways is just working and thinking and producing something and putting on a show with some other people and then moving on to the next project. Well, that's the kind of exciting thing. What was the question? There's a guitarist I've worked with a lot called Xu Yang, who's a Chinese guitarist. First worked with her about 2003. We've been doing a sort of project every 18 months or so since then. And what's great about her is that she's one of these musicians. You know, you get some people who can play an instrument, they'll just look at what you've written, they'll just play it brilliantly, it'll be fine and everything. But they're just literally playing the notation. What Xu does is she sees the music through the notation. So she kind of understands what's going on gesturally, musically, and so on. So she may not play the rhythms I've written, she may not play the dynamics I've written, but she'll play the music I've written, if that makes any sense. Maybe we should hear some. This is a CD that just came out, actually, a couple of weeks ago. This is Ian Bostrich and Xu. I wrote a song cycle for them called The Book of Songs. And The Book of Songs is a collection of ancient Chinese poetry written between about 800 and 600 BC. I took some of those texts in English translations and set them, largely because Xu Fei's name actually comes from the Book of Songs. Her father chose her name and her brother's name from the Book of Songs. And also Benjamin Britten wrote a song cycle called Songs from the Chinese, which also used text from the Book of Songs. So it was to take these ancient Chinese texts in kind of modern translations that were a combination of, well, basically me reworking some other translations. So I'll play two short songs from this. One is all about drinking, it's called In the Tavern, but only lasts about 40 seconds. And then the song after it is a lament. It's about the loss of a loved one, death of a loved one. Let's just hear these two short songs.
These days, continually fuddled with drink, fuddled with drink, with drink. I fail to satisfy the appetites of the soul, but seeing men behaving like drunkards, how can I alone, how can I alone remain sober? The sound of her silk skirts has stopped.
There's a couple of things about that commission. One, of course, is the link with Britain. Another, of course, is Ian Bostrich's voice, which is a voice I've known for many, many years. And writing for it, I was just thinking of his voice and the kind of phrases that he sings and the kind of stuff. So in a sense, I'm writing to his voice totally. And with Xu Fei's guitar playing also, I know the things that she does well and how she'll do them. So I've got the players in my mind the whole time when I'm writing this. And talking about, half the money up front, half later. With this one, I was actually in Beijing for a performance of a guitar concerto Xu Fei was doing, and she and her husband took me and my wife out for dinner. And at the dinner table, after I'd had a bit to drink, she said, "So, can you write some songs for me?" That's how it normally happens. It's amazing how often big deals are struck after you've been drinking. I don't know why this is. You're sort of chatting away, "Oh, great, Ian Bostrich, fantastic, great. When's the first performance?" "Oh, it's in November." "Oh, which year?" "Oh, this year." "Oh, right." And so it's, sometimes things come up in quite random and unexpected ways. But that's the thing about it, is that you're writing for particular people in a particular event. I knew the first performance was going to be in the Globe Theatre, in the Sam Wanamaker Theatre. So also you have in your mind the sort of image of the two of them on the stage there and the kind of audience they have in that place. So all these things sort of influence. So the piece is almost half written before you start, because you know what texts you're using, you know who you're writing for, and you know where it's for. And you know how long it's going to be. What more do you need to know? What I really want to do, though, is play one of my favourite tracks, just because it is so cool. There's collaboration. I would play actually two more things, if I may, which again is really to do with collaboration. I listen to a lot of non-classical music, as everyone does, of my generation and younger. This is the thing, is that composers are drawing on so many different styles of music, so many different aspects. In the piano concerto, which you heard right at the beginning of the evening, if you can remember that far back, there's a sort of background muted trumpet, the sort of Miles Davis sound. The track I want to play is a Joni Mitchell track. Joni Mitchell is an American popular singer. It's called The Dry Cleaner from Des Moines. Music was written by Charles Mingus. Joni wrote the text. The bass part is written, if you like, or improvised by the wonderful Jaco Pastorius. The saxophone part by Wayne Shorter. The brass arrangements also by Jaco Pastorius. So it's a very, very collaborative piece, and it is so good. If you listen to the sort of nuances in her voice as she sings this, I expect many of you are familiar with her, but it's just such an expressive and fantastic instrument. And sometimes, if you're thinking, I've got to write a piece, put on something like this and it just completely gets you into the, oh, right, okay, let's do it, let's go, let's just do it. This is just awesome. So can we have, this is track 13.
I am to all the times. I'm stuck in a slot that's hot. I keep hearing bells all around me, jingle in the lucky jackpots. They keep you tantalized. They keep you reaching for your wallet here in Fool's Paradise. I talked to a cat from Des Moines. He said he ran a cleaning plant. That cat was clanking with coin. Well, he must have had a genie in a lamp, 'cause every time I dropped a dime, I blew it. He kept ringing bells, nothing to it. He got 3 oranges, 3 lemons, 3 cherries, 3 plums. I'm losing my taste for fruit, watching the dry cleaner do it, like Midas in a polyester suit.
I didn't know that, this side, that you're interested in jazz, actually.
Really?
I have no knowledge of that at all. But there's a book which I've always thought of when I think of you, which is by Keith Sawyer, called Creativity. Have you come across this book?
No.
Okay. Well, because it's an amazing book, and it's a study on jazz musicians and how they interact creatively. And the kind of the thesis of this particular book is that music is just creative actions passed around a group of people, and in jazz it happens in real time and amongst the people. So I was really intrigued. Because I know this is a kind of movement in classical music, this idea of sort of group creativity. Do you identify with this as a movement yourself?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, there was a time when a lot of it was going on. I mean, in the English experimental tradition, you've got all sorts of people involved in free improvisation. You've got the scratch orchestra, you've got Cornelius Cardew, you've got graphic scores. There's a great creative sort of tradition coming out of that. For me, to actually sort of, either to go out on stage and improvise, or to leave too much to chance, is outside my comfort zone. Absolutely love it and adore it. So I'd hear something like this, which would never, ever, ever be written down. But I will write it down and change it and adapt it. I mean, I've done it with solos by Pat Metheny. I've done it with one solo from a King Crimson track. This is a guitarist called Robert Fripp. And it was a solo which I just wrote down from the record and gave it to a cello to play, and then wrote a separate guitar part for the guitarist. And it's really interesting when you write down stuff that's been improvised, because the kind of the level of nuance and subtlety in it is extraordinary. And sometimes it's way, way better than anything you could spend hours and hours and hours crafting. And other times it's kind of vacuous. And it's really interesting studying that. I mean, one thing I think we'll probably finish with an extract from my guitar concerto. This is the one that John Williams recorded with the RPO, but it wasn't written for John. It was written for our mutual friend, Graham Roberts. And when it was written for him, Graham is a very particular kind of guitarist who uses a lot of strumming, rasguado strumming with his right hand, and does very particular things in particular kinds of music. And he was really specific about what he wanted from the piece. We would get together, and I would give him chords and patterns and scales to improvise on. He'd go away, work some things out, would come back, I'd record the sessions. And that kind of energy that I got from collaborating with him drove me into writing the piece. I'm not saying I wrote down his improvisations, but just simply being in the room with him and talking creatively about what he had in his mind this concerto should be really helped me kind of get it. So, he described the first movement, he wanted something that was highly energetic, kind of urban and sort of funky, but with lots of other details too. A second movement that was an Algarian sort of English slow movement, and then a kind of Latin American last movement. He was very specific about all these things. And so, a lot of the ideas of that came from him. And I think if we just play this as a kind of last extract, and then if there are any one or two wind-up things at the end, we can finish. But this is a guitar concerto from 2012. This is track 14. And we'll have the first 2 minutes or so of the first movement.